All right.
Got a theme?
Jared Sandler, super smart, African-American man. Jared Sandler, you are an incredible baseball fan.
Here he is, folks. The Jared Sandler program.
TheSandlot.org. Go check out Jared's charity.
His Jaredy.
His charity. So, Rangers take a loss last night. Was it 2-1?
2-1.
Nobody knows.
In my head, I was like, man, it feels like this team has squandered a bunch of good pitching opportunities. And I went and looked, and they're actually 9-2 in games where they've allowed 2 runs or less. Yesterday being one of those 2 losses. But in games where they've allowed 3 runs and less or less, they're 13-6, which is one of the worst winning percentages in baseball. So I wasn't that far off, I guess. And really, man, it was bad last time we talked, and it really hasn't gotten better. It's Wyatt and a bunch of guys on offense.
Yeah. So last 6 games, they've allowed 17 runs. That's a little bit less than 3 runs per game. I know that's complicated math. They're 1-5 in that stretch, right? So they're in a tough way right now. And you're right. It's Wyatt and maybe this game, fill in the blank player has a good game, and then the next game it's one other guy, but you need more than that. And here's the challenge. Sunday they lost. They scored 2 runs, but they had 10 hits. Right? It's tough to only score 2 runs on 10 hits unless you're just like constantly making outs on the bases, which they weren't doing. But they're not walking either. Yesterday, Josh Young drew a walk, and it ended a streak of 20 straight innings without drawing a walk. And so they're not supplementing the base runners they're getting with hits, with walks. And while it's not like they don't slug, if you're not going to walk, you've really got to slug a lot to kind of make up for that. But they've hit 30 home runs, 22 of them are solo home runs. And that last game they lost in Sacramento when they had 3 home runs in 1 inning, they were all solo home runs, and they ended up losing the game 4-3. So it's not just one thing, and it's obviously not just one person. But yeah, they really need Corey Seager back. And here's the wacky thing too, Jake. I know you love these numbers. Baseball Prospectus has their own version of a stat called weighted runs created plus. I'm not going to break down the meaning of it and bog people down, but I'll just say that it's a metric that front offices definitely use and consider when evaluating players. And Baseball Prospectus has their own little tweak on the formula. The Rangers are the only team in Major League Baseball to have 2 guys in the top 15, Corey Seager and Wyatt Langford. But they also are last in runs scored because they haven't had those guys healthy at the same time, and they really haven't gotten enough consistently from some of the other guys in their lineup. So there's potential, obviously, for this lineup to grow, but right now they're really in a tough way for sure.
I think the last time we talked, we were kind of begging Bochy to switch up the lineup, move Simeon down, and it seems like since we had that conversation, we haven't seen the same lineup twice. Now, Seager's been out, some guys have been out, but it seems like they just haven't found that right 9 fit yet.
Yeah, and it's going to switch lefty righty, obviously, but yeah, I mean you're right, Blake, and they made the switch, right? Marcus Simeon has hit 5th, starting with last Tuesday when they opened their series in Sacramento, and you've seen Josh Smith lead off against righties. You've seen Kevin Pillar lead off against lefties. Yesterday, Kyle Higashioka hit 2nd. That's a pretty valuable spot in the lineup. We saw Adolis Garcia hit 7th, and I just think a lot of it's a product of you're trying to figure out ways to get certain guys going. You're also trying to put guys in different spots because they're not going well. And it's one thing if you've got 1 or 2 guys who are struggling, but it's more than just that. They've got a number of guys who they expected to be middle of the order producers who are struggling, and then another guy in Corey Seager who's not available right now. Hopefully, will be towards the end of the week, early next week. But yeah, I mean it's tough. It's kind of like a lot of people like to criticize a manager when the bullpen is struggling and say that, they don't know how to manage the bullpen. But it's like, how can a manager manage a bullpen when, he's getting dealt 2-7 off suit? Well, it's similar to a lineup. Bochy needs to do this. Bochy needs to do that. Well, it's tough because the hand that he's currently dealt is a really tough hand to work with, being the way guys are performing right now. And so he's trying to figure it out. And it's a balance, I think, as well, between not knee jerking, not sending a message of panic, SOS, especially with veterans, but also realizing you can't just keep running the same thing out there if it's not working. And obviously, so far, it hasn't been working. And this is a very aggressive lineup. So maybe it's going to be a volatile lineup that's very streaky. Their swing rate is the highest in Major League Baseball. They are chasing a lot. And, you're not going to totally change the identity of these guys, but, incremental gains, right? All right, this is going to be a lineup that's going to chase, but maybe they can dial it back a little bit. This is a lineup that's, going to swing. Maybe, they can dial it back a little bit. And, the one guy I keep thinking about who can help not totally balance it, but whose profile fits on the other end of the spectrum is Evan Carter. He's a guy who will take a lot of pitches. He will see a lot of pitches. He will draw walks. He has been ticking up a little bit in AAA. They obviously want to make sure everything's good with the back as well as the bat. And but I wouldn't be surprised if we see Evan Carter sometime soon, just because his skill set, his profile fits very much what this team needs. And unfortunately, Leody Taveras hasn't really seized the second life in center field, and I think there could be an opportunity for Evan to find his way back.
So I thought I saw a thing last week that said that they fired their hitting coach.
But that was a fake. Yeah, that was a fake tweet. I saw that as well. MLB Facts FAX, I think, tweeted that. I don't remember, but yeah, they have not. Donnie Ecker is I think his title is offensive coordinator, and you're starting to see, that title around other teams. And Justin Vealey was just brought in, coming from the Giants, and he worked with Donnie in San Francisco. And guys, it's a tough one. Mike Bassick always shared a story that, I think perfectly illustrates how difficult it is to know, is this coaching? Is it playing? And Bassick was talking about Rudy Jaramillo, who, is the Rangers hitting coach back in, the 90s and early 2000s. He was seen as the greatest, hitting coach in the game. Like Leo Mazzoni was thought of as the best pitching coach in the game. He had Glavine, Smoltz, Maddox, Avery, Millwood, just a run of pitchers. Well, Rudy Jaramillo had some great hitters as well. And Bassick, I think has shared a story before where Rudy Jaramillo, was top step of the dugout. Juan Gonzalez was on deck, and he said, Juan, hey, they're going to throw you a first pitch breaking ball to try get you to chase. Lay off. And Juan, got it. You got it. I'm on it. 30 seconds later, Juan Gonzalez gets in the box. What happens? First pitch breaking ball in the dirt. He swings and misses. And, the instruction that was given to him, just went out the door, right? And so it's always tough to know the difference between what's being coached and, what's being executed. But yeah, no changes were made, but I'm starting to see a lot of that stuff on Twitter and suggestions from folks. And I understand the frustration, but it's always tough to interpret that sort of thing.
That's interesting, just because I remember Bassick telling me a thing off the air many years ago about, he was in spring training told, don't worry about your numbers. We need you to work on this, whatever it was, slider, curveball. And then, so yes, he was throwing it throughout the game, even though it was not, that wouldn't be how he would regularly pitch. He got hammered and he got sent down to the minors because he was doing what is being coached, where then he got judged on what was being executed. And that was during spring training, where supposedly you're just supposed to be able to work on your game, but he was a bubble player. So that's why, coaches oftentimes are kind of, they're consultants. They're not, it's not like you're a college basketball coach from the 80s.
Yeah, you're not a dictator.
You're helping them along, but if you keep doing, that's why the Luka thing is wonderful, because Luka, even a great coach like Rick Carlisle will admit, all right, sometimes you just got to let him do his thing. And that's probably Juan Gonzalez's thought too, is, all right, good suggestion, but I know what's best for me because I've done what's best for me my whole life.
And the other thing too is, and you're seeing this in all sports with specialty skill sets and whatnot, whether it's training or fitness, it's this way in hitting. It's not just with the Rangers across Major League Baseball. A lot of these guys have their own hitting coach as well. Someone who's watching their swings on film every single day. There have been stories about Corey Seager, and he works with his hitting coach with a tripod on FaceTime before every single game. And so, yeah, I think a hitting coach can help promote a philosophy and do his best to try and send a message, maybe from a scouting standpoint, a preparation standpoint. But I think it is tough for these guys because they might try and work with Jake on his mechanics, and maybe Jake's all ears, but Blake might have his own personal hitting coach. And so, who's Blake going to listen to? The guy that he's paying out of his own pocket to coach him, who he trusts, or the other guy? And I think sometimes it's tough for coaches. I think it's become this way in a lot of sports, not just baseball, where it's tough to separate the two.
And they have two hitting coaches too. Like it's like we're just gonna.
Isn't one of them just a bunt coach?
Is that true?
No.
Oh, okay. But I mean,
just sounded like a
the fact
really
that
funny.
teams are like adding coaches, and obviously we've seen it in the NFL, but baseball doing it now. Like how many voices do we need? How many is?
Well, it's weird because it does feel like it's somewhat of an approach thing. Like they're hitting the ball hard. I mean, I know you look at that, but they're ninth in hard hit ball by one stat. They're first in another on batted ball on Fangraphs. Like they're hitting the ball hard, and they have talented hitters, but they're putting themselves in bad positions and counts and then not being able to get out of them, which is what you're going to look at a hitting coach for. So I'm not saying that's the problem by any means, but they've got talent. They've got guys who are hitting the ball hard. They just get into some really bad spots. And I thought it was really interesting. I heard Dave say this to the Musers the other day, just the idea of having Semien and Seager at the top. When it doesn't go well, that inning is over in 6 pitches. And it was happening a lot. And now now your starters out there, they're already kind of on their heels a little bit, like, damn. So being able to get Semien to 5 would be, consistently with Seager and Langford at the top, would be awesome.
Yeah, and, Jake, I thought in 2023, before we knew that 2023 was going to be what 2023 was, and I guess we really didn't know that until you got up 3-1 against Arizona, because going into the playoffs, we all thought they were doomed, 2 and out. But 2022 was not a good year, and that was the 6 straight years of really irrelevance, right? So 2023, they got off to this good start, but the moment I thought, all right, I think there's something here. I'll never forget. It was a game in Seattle against Logan Gilbert, and they couldn't get to Logan Gilbert, but they made him work, and they had these tough at bats, and they got Logan Gilbert out probably an inning earlier than his stat line, other than pitch count, would suggest he would exit the game. But they got the pitch count up because even though they couldn't solve him, they made life really difficult for him. And they did that time and time again throughout that 2023 season. So to your point, they weren't having a lot of even with Semien and Seager at the top, those guys were doing more damage. So maybe they did swing at the first pitch or second pitch, but they were getting on base at a much higher rate, extending innings. And they were a really difficult lineup to pitch to. This is a lineup that, has the ability to be really good. And I don't think anyone's given up on that potential by any means. But right now, are they a difficult lineup to pitch to? And I don't know the answer. I'm not pitching against them, but I think with what you're referencing, Jake, the way it seems like starting pitchers are going deeper into games against the Rangers than what is their norm. And I think some of that is they get into a rhythm and get 5-pitch inning, 7-pitch inning, 9-pitch inning, and all of a sudden they're sitting there 4 innings. They've allowed 1 run, but they've only thrown 51 pitches, and they're in a good place to limit the need for the other team's bullpen. And the other thing, guys, what that does, and we saw this come to the forefront against the Giants, when you're having to use your bullpen a lot, it might not matter in that game, but it might the next game and the game after. And when you're not scoring a lot of runs like the Rangers aren't and having to play a ton of close games, I think their last 12 games or 13 games have been decided by 3 runs or less. That means you're probably consistently using your high leverage relievers. which means that you are probably consistently in that stretch playing games in which your best relievers are either maybe middle, a medium full gas tank or not available that game. And another thing the 2023 team did, they didn't have a great bullpen, but they blew teams out. And so they were able to use their best relievers more often than not anytime they played a close game, because chances were one of the 2, 3, 4 games before they won by 5, 6, 7 runs. They didn't need those guys. Well, right now they're not scoring a lot of runs. They're having to use their leverage relievers a lot, maybe more than they like. And they also go into a number of games in which those guys aren't even available. And it's tough to win those games in the latter innings when you don't have your best horses available. Not to say the other guys haven't been good. They've actually been really good, but they're not your typical 7th, 8th, or 9th pitchers for a reason. You want those guys when those guys are needed.
What's Sutter Health Park like?
It's fine.
That's the minor league stadium they played in against the A's.
Yeah, have you guys noticed, at least on like ESPN and I think MLB, if you go to the standings, it just says athletics.
Mm-hmm.
Like it doesn't say Oakland,
Oakland
or Vegas,
No.
it just says athletics.
Yeah.
From a fan standpoint, they were fun games. The ball flew out of that park.
Yeah, it's going to continue to fly as it gets hotter there. I mean, I feel badly because
It'll be an
they're
asterisk season.
asterisk season. Yes, they're doing their best. Like the Oakland people who are now just the Athletics, who've been tasked to make that is as close to an experience that the players and stuff are used to. They're doing the best they can. I think from a fan standpoint, I mean, it's not like Oakland was drawing a lot. Now they're basically sold out. It's a cool experience, I think, for the fans. But I'll tell you, from a baseball standpoint, other than the ball flying, the one thing that was definitely noteworthy and had some players talking is that in every other major league ballpark, your dugout is connected by a tunnel to the clubhouse and maybe a batting cage or an area where you can, get on a treadmill or get on a bike quickly if you're a pitcher, or do whatever it is that's a part of your routine in between at bats or in between innings. Well, they don't have that there for either team, right? It's not like one team has it, the other doesn't. But that clubhouse for the Rangers is in center field. And so you don't have the same ability to just take a few swings off the tee to stay loose if you're off the bench, or, it was a little chillier. And I don't know if this contributed to Corey Seager's, hammy issue or not, but Corey's a guy who in between innings, when he comes in from the field and he's not due up to hit, he's doing stuff to keep his body loose, to stay loose. Well, you don't have the same ability to do that. And so from a sheer baseball standpoint, that is something that I think stood out. And apparently other teams have, made a comment about that. And I don't know what they can do about it, but, I thought that was something interesting.
Elsewhere, Chris Davis's record is safe
Yes.
because Jock Peterson got a hit. That was a interesting story to follow.
Yeah, I need that guy to get going, and he's obviously well aware that he's struggling. He has been hitting better here lately, but need that guy to get going. He's got 1 RBI. Need to see the RBI count fill up, because it seems like he's coming up with guys on base, and need to see the power too. I mean, he's a guy that's, if he played a full season, he's a guy who's got 30 home run power. Now he because he's a platoon player, it's tough to say he plays a full season or gets a full season's worth of plate appearances, but he's a guy that you expect to hit 20 plus home runs for you. And he's still sitting with a goose egg there. And so really, especially as this team's scuffling, it'd be great to get that guy, going and hitting the ball out of the park. And, I know everyone loves small ball and all this, and I'm not saying it's not fun to watch, but just from a sheer winning standpoint, the single best thing you can do is hit the home run. And the Rangers haven't hit a home run in 4 games. So hopefully they can turn that around tonight.